really people didn't know. They really didn't know at all. They didn't even know she was sick a little bit.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the inaugural episode of Town Hall, a Black queer podcast.
The podcast where we journey through a theme by sharing stories, music, poetry, and art of varying depth and hilarity.
I am your host, Bob the Drag Queen.
And I'm your host, Peppermint. And today's episode is all about secrets.
Juicy, juicy secrets.
Juicy.
Salacious secrets.
Salivating.
Secrets.
I can't think of another
Victoria's secret. Victor's
No, not Victoria's Secret.
Vivacious' secret. Okay, so Pep, we all have sex secrets, right?
I guess mine would be more in the category of shame, but yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, don't secrets and shame they're not always hand in hand, but it's kind of like love and marriage.
Yes.
Like they kind of go like a horse and carriage.
If you wanna embarrass somebody, humiliate somebody, or shut somebody the hell up, you just bring up their sex life.
Right? Yeah, because it's supposed to be something you do like behind closed doors. Literally.
Yeah.
Not always. Sometimes it is out in open, and we're not here to kink shame. Pep and I are not here to kink shame anyone. No kink shaming unless
I'm
is kink
specifically
shaming.
here to
Feel
kink
free.
shame. No more kinks. It's a new day.
2023 kink free. So we have our first secret. We're gonna dive right into the deep world of sex and salaciousness, honey, and shame, and we'll leave it at that.
This is the best way to get y'all started on our podcast, honey. Just dive right into the sex, but this might not be the kind of sex that you were envisioning. It's not so vanilla, I guess.
Pep, this is a forward question, but do you consider your sex to be vanilla? Are you a vanilla girl?
Darling, mine is butter pecan. I actually am quite a vanilla kind of gal, and that's probably not a surprise for people, but mine is like an sort of an exotic vanilla, if you will.
French vanilla.
Yeah, you know.
Like that Trader Joe's vanilla.
No, definitely not mass marketed corporate vanilla, yes. Corporate vanilla, quite. I quite think that's the answer.
So we have a story about some sex that is not vanilla. In fact, you might call this sex chocolate.
Oh no!
So,
where's my cup?
I don't want to bear the lead. So I'm gonna let you all go ahead and just listen to it. Listen to the secret.
Nasty.
Hi, Bob. Hi, Peppermint. Here's my embarrassing story. I met this guy. He was really cool. Played in a band. Played bass. Wore a leather jacket. He was like the Fonz of the 2010s. So we had mutual friends in common, and so whenever I saw him, we always ended up talking about music and stuff like that. So we got along really well. So one night we were at the bar, and it ended up just being the two of us talking for a while. We noticed that there was literally nobody else around us, except for the bartender. So we cashed out, decided to go to a 24-hour diner and get some breakfast because it was like 2 a.m. by now. I had a waffle. I had bacon. I had sausage. I had a whole plate. You can call it a grand slam if you want. And we continued to talk and had a good time, and then went back to his place. So we had a beer and we started doing stuff, making out over here and then making out over there, and clothes are off and everything else. Next thing you know, I'm on all fours. He's behind me and he sticks a finger in my butt. And I was like, oh, we're doing this. Oh, okay. I was not prepared, but oh, that's nice. Okay. So then he put 2 fingers in. And then my body rebelled. Because keep in mind, I had just had breakfast. And I farted in his face. because I am face down, ass up on this man's bed, and my ass is pointed directly at his face. So he like paused, and I paused, and I went, I'm really sorry about that. And then I started moving again, thinking like, all right, if I move, then he'll move and we'll get back at it. And that's what happened. We both finished. Had a good time, I think. He dropped me off to my car the next morning, was really sweet, gave me a kiss goodbye, and never talked to him again. Like I said, we have mutual friends in common, so I'd see him occasionally. My old town where I used to live, he still lives there, I think, was a qualifier for Iron Man. So friends of mine had a corner house and they would throw a big party and we'd cheer on the Iron Men and Iron Women. And so I saw him there like a year or so after with his wife, who he was not married at the time. They had just gotten married and had a baby. And so that was one of the last times I saw him. Cut to about 3 years after that, my hairstylist moved salons. And so I started going to her new salon where I met the owner. Owner was super nice. She friended me on Facebook and I didn't see very many posts from her. And she's not, she probably friended quite a few people that came to her salon just for numbers and support and all that. It was his wife. And she didn't know who I was because why the fuck would he tell her? And I never said anything. But I've since moved away and I deleted her because I'm like, this is too weird and I hope she never finds out. But anyway, don't eat breakfast before people stick fingers in your butt. And I have learned since to not be a messy bottom.
This past fall, when me and Monet were on tour for Sibling Rivalry, we got to tour the House of Juicy Couture, who won season 3 of Legendary. Really, really amazing.
Yes.
Amazing cast.
Yes.
And one of the cast members is this young girl named Brooklyn. Brooklyn is, first of all, she's 19 years old. I kept thinking to myself, like, imagine like being on tour at 19. Like I could even imagine.
I can't even take it at 40 something. And I actually was there at the show and saw you all and saw them perform with y'all.
Yeah. Now, if any of you were on that tour, you saw Brooklyn was she's really tall and slim, and she had the long hair, kind of like a brown skin, like a light brown skin young lady. And while we were hanging out on the bus and getting ready backstage, I'm obviously getting to know the House of Juicy Couture. And the more and more Brooklyn talk, I kept being like, "Oh my God, your life was there was a lot of secrets in your life." And it's weird because she was kind of like, "Oh, and it never occurred to me." like she was like, "Oh, I didn't realize." And I was like, "Yeah, girl, that's a lot of like her whole life was a secret. Like it was like a big amalgamation of secrets, a bunch of secret threads weaving together to make a big secret tapestry." You know what I mean?
You mean like a secret casserole?
But see, some secret sauce, some secret pasta, some secret green beans. So
I am in the mood for this.
So I asked her to come on the podcast and share her story, and I'm excited for y'all to hear it.
I'm excited to have some.
All right, here we go.
My name is Brooklyn. My pronouns are she, her, they, them. I'm 19 years old and I am a dancer / model / everything. I didn't really have the traditional sad sob story, LGBTQ story. We never ever spoke about it ever. Nobody ever asked me if I was gay or if I liked boys. It was just, you want to be Nicki Minaj for Halloween? Be Nicki Minaj for Halloween. You want to jump double dutch? Jump double dutch, I got to be a kid, so that was really, really fun. But as I got older, started seeing things. I wasn't ever fully out, but I wasn't ever fully in the closet either. I was just me, I just lived my life. And, I never acted on it, until I got to probably high school. I started experimenting with different things. So when I first got to high school, everybody had already knew each other and I was the new kid on the block. This boy, he had asked me, he was like, "Are you gay?" And I was just like, wow, this is the first time anybody's ever really like ask me like, and I'm like older and I'm not like, afraid to say like, yeah, I'm gay. So I'm like, yeah, I'm gay, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So everybody's just having a regular conversation. I get to school the next day. The whole school knew that I was gay, like the whole school. And I was like, wow, damn, like less than 24 hours, like, wow. But everyone, like, was still pretty cool. No one really was like acting like strange toward me. However, though, I am no longer gay. I am now like transgender. And that nobody like really knows. Like that I'm keeping a secret. I'm keeping it like to myself because it's something very sacred to me. My mom knows. My mom is definitely accepting. It took her a while to like, grasp it, but she's definitely accepting. My siblings are very open and accepting. I have a gay brother and a lesbian sister, so fit right into the, spectrum. So that's really fun. My dad isn't really accepting, so I don't really like talk to my dad anymore. We're not really like close. When it comes to like my immediate family, that's pretty much it. Everybody's really accepting except for him. So before I was dancing, I was like jumping double dutch. So I was like really good at double dutch. Like I was the best like in my neighborhood. Like nobody could beat me. Like it was really great for me. That was my first passion. I ended up joining the double dutch team. My dad came back around and he, I guess, didn't want me like jumping double dutch or doing anything feminine. So I actually had to stop jumping double dutch. My mom actually made up a lie and told me that, well, not made up a lie because I kind of was doing bad in school. But, I guess that was her reasoning for like pulling me out instead of like, him. And actually like letting me know it was him. So after I stopped jumping double dutch, I was about 12-ish, 13. And I was just like really unhappy with life at that age. Like I was like really bad. I was like throwing temper tantrums and like all of this stuff. And so fast forward to high school, I joined a dance team because they were practicing in my high school and it really intrigued me what they were doing. And so I told my mom wasn't really like with it at first, but then like I was like ignoring her and I just kept going to rehearsal and I just kept getting like grounded but like, it was like a never ending cycle, like grounding and rehearsal. Like I said, like my parents were like really accepting. Like my mom was really accepting, my godmother was really accepting. I always got to do everything I wanted to do, but when my dad came back around, he didn't want me doing like anything feminine. And so my mom started like just taking away everything because of him. So I had found voguing through the little dance company and I went to the dance instructor. I was like, what is that? And he was like, that's voguing. I was like, that's voguing? He was like, yeah. I was like, I don't want to do anything else. I just want to do that. He was like, you being dead ass? I was like, I'm dead serious. I don't want to do anything else. I don't want to do no more hip hop. I don't want to do no more contemporary. I want to do that. That is what I want to do. So I literally didn't do anything other than Vogue. Like I was only just there just to Vogue. I got really good at voguing. So I never really spoke to my dad about like these type of things because like I was like always like really hyper feminine and he was like really hyper masculine. And so it was like I never really spoke to him. I spoke to my mom though. I told my mom that I was interested in voguing and I wanted to join a house and all of these things. And my mom had knew about ballroom previously because of my sister and my brother. They were in ballroom before. But I guess like the things that like they told my mom about ballroom, she had like this like perception of ballroom that was like bad and she didn't want me like anywhere near ballroom. And so she was like, you're not going to any balls. You're not going to be in ballroom and blah, blah, blah. You're going to stop voguing. I was like, I'm not going to stop voguing. Like, I already stopped jumping double dutch. Like, I'm not going to stop doing everything I like to do. It was actually one day I had asked my mom if I could go outside. My mom was also really strict. Like, I got to do everything I wanted to do, but she was really strict. I had to be in the house at, I think it was either 8:30 or 9 p.m. It was in the summer. And there was a ball. The ball didn't start until 9 p.m. And it was like a little, like, I guess, like, little, like, fun day. Like, it was like a bouncy house and all of this stuff before the ball. So I'm at the little fun thing or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, it was getting later and later. It's like 7:30, then it's like 8, then it's 8:30. My mom texted me at 8:30. She was like, okay, start making your way home. And I didn't respond. And then she called me at 9. And by this time, the ball is going on. So, like, I don't hear my phone ringing. I'm just, like, fascinated with, like, what's going on with the ball. And she's calling my phone down. Like, I have probably, like, 10 to 15 missed calls. And I got home that night. I actually ended up walking the ball. I didn't win, but I had a clip of mine go viral. And so that put me on, like, the ballroom map. I think, like, just knowing that I wasn't supposed to be there made me, like, want to be in the moment there even more. I remember one of my battles, the battles that actually went viral. I was, like, catwalking, and my elements were really bad. This was my first ball. Everything was really horrible. I was, like, catwalking, and then I did, like, this little break dance move was like jumping back onto my hands and jumping back onto my feet, and I did that, and the whole ball is like screaming. Everybody's like, yeah, I was like, ah, when I did, and like, I don't know. After that went viral, I literally got like text messages on Facebook from like every house asking me to join their house, and I didn't want to join any house other than Juicy because I had previously heard of Juicy through my dance instructor. A lot of his friends were Juicies. And so I was like, I don't want to be anything else other than Juicy. So Juicy had reached out, but I didn't know Juicy had reached out. Like, I was just seeing a bunch of text messages. I was just ignoring everybody. And so I went back to my dance instructor. I was like, who are these people? Like, who are they? And then he was like, that's Quana, that's Mother Juicy, that's Quana, text her back. So I'm like, she's a Juicy? He's like, yeah. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to write her back right now. So I wrote back Mother Juicy, and she invited me to a rehearsal, and I became a Juicy. So that was really, really fun. I was actually grounded for like the rest of the summer because of that ball. So I actually didn't end up becoming a Juicy until like maybe like September-ish, October. And I was just like, after that, I was just like sneaking out, going to balls, going to practices, and blah, blah, blah. Getting grounded, getting in trouble, getting my butt whooped because I was doing things I wasn't supposed to be doing. Eventually, my mom kind of got over it. I think she kind of got over it when I was like 15, almost 16. She kind of got over it. She stopped caring. She realized that I was just going to keep doing what I wanted to do. Like, you know, just something I wanted to do. Can't stop him. When I turned 15, a little while after I turned 15, my mom, my dad decided to move to Oklahoma. Prior to them moving to Oklahoma, we lived in Brooklyn, New York. So my mom is like, oh, we're moving to Oklahoma. I'm like, I'm not moving with you to Oklahoma. I'm not going there. She's like, why not? I'm like, because I just found something that I like to do. I'm not going to let you take this from me again. Like, I'm not doing that. So she's like, oh, well, you don't have a choice. You don't have a choice. I'm your mother. You're not going to tell me what you're doing and what you're not doing and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, all right, we'll see. And we had got into it really bad about that. And then the time came where they finally like up and left to go to Oklahoma. And so what they did was they were really slick about it. Let me tell you what they did. They were really slick. They went to Oklahoma by themselves, and they left me and my sister. My sister now is, I think, 21 or 22. At the time I was 15, I think she was 17 or 18, one of the two. They left us here in New York. They had bought us plane tickets. My mom called. She's like, oh, I want you to come visit and blah, blah, blah. She bought fucking one-way tickets to Oklahoma and didn't buy a ticket back. But I didn't know this. Until probably like 3 or 4 days after being there. So I get there. I'm like, oh, the house is nice. Whatever. It's nice here. I went to go to the Walmart because it was like a Walmart kind of like around the corner. And on my way back, I was walking back and I literally stood in the middle of the street, did a full 360 and saw nothing. Like literally saw nothing. So it was like going from like the city, being in the city, big buildings, people walking, all of these different sounds and smells to like nothing. And then it was like really cold too. It was really cold at the time. I'm like, I'm not staying here. Like I would never live here. I don't know what she was thinking. So I get back in the house and that's just it. Then it's the next day. Next day goes by. Then it's like probably like our third day being there. I'm like, okay, when's like, when are we going home? So she's ignoring me. She like is like ignoring everything I'm saying. So now it's the fourth day we're there. She finally answers me back. I'm like, okay, Ma, when are we going home? She's like, you're not going home. I'm like, I'm not going home. She's like, no, you got a one-way ticket here. I was like, you for real? She was like, I'm dead serious. I was like, oh, watch this. And then she was like, watch this. I was like, yeah. She was like, what you gonna do? I was like, I'm going home. She was like, this is your home. I was like, I live in New York. I live in Brooklyn, New York. She was like, okay, we'll see. So she had set up Oklahoma in a way where my sister had already had a job. I think my sister had already knew the plan. But my sister wasn't as rebellious as I am. So I think my sister already knew the plan because she had already had a job out there. So it was a Thursday. I will never forget. It was a Thursday. My mom left for work first, and then my sister left for work. And I called my oldest sister. She's probably, at the time, I think, 28. She lives in Williamsburg, New York. So she didn't live with us while we were here in New York. So I call her. I'm like, Denasia, I don't want to stay here. I want to go home. This is not my home, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, can you buy me a plane ticket home? Because at this time, I have no money. I'm 15 years old. I think I probably only had like $100 to my name, but that was cash. I didn't have no bank cards or nothing to buy a plane ticket. So she literally bought me a ticket, booked my Uber to the airport and my Uber back home from the airport in New York. The flight was about 2 hours, 3 hours. And when I got home, my mom had called me and her exact words were, yo, you really left. And I was like, yeah, I told you I wasn't staying there. You thought I was playing. I wasn't playing. And she was like, yo, you really left. Like, she's just saying it over and over. She's like, yo, you really left. I can't believe you really left. I was like, yeah. And I could, like, hear her, like start crying in her voice. So I'm like, I'm going to call you later. Click. And I hung up the phone on her. And then she called me back the next day and she was just like bawling, crying. She was like, I can't believe you really left. Like, you really don't want to be here. Blah, 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 blah. I can't stop you. I love you so much. And that was just like a whole thing. And so she actually tried to get me to stay out there again. She did the same thing again. But around this time, I was like, I think probably like 16 or 17. And I had my own money at this time. Like, I was hustling, doing my thing, making my own money. So I had my own money and I just bought my own plane ticket home. When I seen like somebody vote for the first time, I was like so fascinated. Like, I was like, wow, like this is amazing. Like, and it's like people are hitting their backs on the floor. Like, what is so amazing about people hitting their backs on the floor and like doing like crazy moves? But I don't know. It was just like so intriguing, like the different things they were doing to get to that point on the floor. It was just like so mind boggling. Now, like I can tell you, like being deeper in ballroom, you definitely meet a lot of different people and it kind of helps you understand different people and like what they come from and who they are. And it helps you mentor people that want to come to ballroom in the future and teaches you how to maneuver with them.
I am here with respected comedian here in the Los Angeles County area.
People do respect me. I don't know why. I didn't tell them to.
I've chosen respect. So you said you okay. So I called you in and asked you if you had a secret, and you told me that
Yes.
you have one. How long have you kept the secret?
Well, I kept the secret, but I also forgot because it's happened like 25 plus years ago, probably even 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And look, my brother to this day, I think to this day, I haven't talked to him about it in a while. He believes that in the middle of the night, a ghost threw something like a basketball at him. And he tells the story on occasion, but it truly was me waking up in the middle of the night and hitting him with something. I can't remember if it was a basketball or not, but it was clearly something that made it feel, because it's been so long. But yeah, he still doesn't know that I was the one that hit him and ran across the room and pretended to be asleep.
When was the last time you heard your brother tell the story?
Oh, I feel like it was probably like a decade plus ago.
So in adulthood,
yes,
he was like a ghost fully threw an object at me.
Yes, and it woke me up, and nobody else was there. I was there. We shared a room. He should have assumed I was the one that did that.
And why didn't you come forward and say, "Hey, it was me. I did it"?
Why? It's so much better now. As a matter of fact, I hope he never hears this.
All right. Well, your secret is safe with us. Thank you for telling your secret.
Thank you.
Okay, so I mean, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Drag Race. We have we've gone a full nearly an hour and haven't even mentioned.
Not even once. Not even once.
We haven't uttered the words Drag Race, and we don't want the lightning from the drag gods to strike us. So we have to mention it. It's in our life contract, right? And everybody who knows us obviously knows and probably is a fan of Drag Race, as we are. And Drag Race is a juggernaut, a ratings juggernaut for reality TV. It's Emmy Award nominated and winning. And now it's franchised all over the world. But a lot of people fall in love with the queens on the show and the drag entertainers on the show, but they don't really know much about the people behind the scenes and who create the show. There are directors and producers and writers and camera people. Obviously, my daughter, Wintergreen, Sarge. And so the tone of RuPaul's Drag Race filming a reality show like that, there's a lot of sort of, for lack of a better word, secrecy behind the scenes, where the performers, who are very energetic and very outgoing, are urged to sort of keep that under wraps for a while until they get on camera. So when they're at lunch, or when they're just relaxing, or when they're just in their hotel room, to really sort of keep those feelings sort of bottled up until they're in their interview and in their confessional or on camera. And the people who are in charge of sort of uncorking that emotional bottle and allowing it to beautifully play out for people to see on camera, the people who hold that position and that job title are called story producers. And they are the people who really have the closest relationship with the drag entertainers, and sort of are in charge of pulling the story out of us and allowing us to be, for our personality to come out on camera.
They're who you talk to the most while you're there. You talk to them more than anyone while you're there. And there are two particular story producers who have made a huge impact on a lot of the queens from the show, me particularly. And their names are Jacqueline Wilson, and we call her Mish, but her name is Michelle Mills. Now, so was Jacqueline your story producer?
She sure was.
She was my story producer as well. And Jacqueline,
we didn't get along very well until.
Oh, did you not?
Until after the filming. I snapped on her one time.
Oh,
I'll tell you about that later.
Me and Jacqueline got along really well. I loved her so much, and I really had so much trust in her. And
I did not trust her.
And Jacqueline's best friend, her name is Mish, who still works on the show to this day. And we asked Mish if she would come and talk about keeping someone else's secret. Michelle Mills was interviewed by our wonderful producer, Charlene Westbrook. So you'll hear a voice in there, and that is Miss Westbrook.
Hi, I'm Michelle Mills. I'm a reality TV producer currently on RuPaul's Drag Race, where I've worked for about 11 years. I've met a lot of very interesting people, both in front and behind the camera. The person who was the co-executive producer with me for most of the time that I've worked on Drag Race is Jacqueline Wilson. She is actually the person who hired me, but she really was super devoted to the job and super devoted to the show. And I'm kind of the same way. So we did ultimately end up clicking really well and became great, great friends, both, at work and outside of work as well. Jacqueline had a very powerful presence and energy. You would not notice her when she walked into the room. Her presence came in with her at all times. She was known for her style. Her hair was always done up in like braids or twists or something, but always very noticeable, very artistic. And the clothing was very New York style. I mean, I don't know how to describe it. She was really, really beautiful. She basically just always looked like she was, on a runway. Everybody commented on her fashion and she was very proud of it. She was that bitch. So I've worked at Drag Race almost 12 years now. And I worked with Jacqueline for about 10 years of that until she passed away. We basically did the same job and kind of split the work between us. So our job entails, a lot of things, but a large part of it is post-production. And so we spend basically the bulk of the year doing that. It's a very specific kind of job where a lot of what we talked about had to do with like all different kinds of topics that maybe are not typical in a workplace. So it was, how do we want to represent things that have to do with queer culture, with different racial issues, ethnicities, gender issues, storytelling, creative, like all kinds of things. I think by the end of the first season, I started to feel like we were work friendly. And then I guess it was the second season where slowly we started, getting in deeper, having more conversations, and we would go to the movies or go to a concert together, or also, or just talk on the phone if we were like having a rough day. And then we also both loved learning from each other. As much as I felt like I knew, I loved learning from her. As a Black person, how do you feel about how this storyline is playing out or how we should play it? And the same thing that I would bring to her about Latino storylines or about plus size women storylines. Jacqueline often felt she had to be extra careful at work being a Black woman. And I, being Mexican, did not care about that. So I think, a little bit, but not so much. And I think we tapered each other. She kind of got me to mellow out a little bit at times when I should. And I got her to, say, hey, there's two of us now. There's two voices. It's stronger this way. And maybe we can say something more. So we also kind of did that for each other. So Jacqueline passed away in 2019. And about a year and a half before that, she had been sick. There was a flu going around and a bunch of people on our team all ended up having all these symptoms of the flu. Jacqueline had the flu at some point as well. However, she had this cough. She had this lingering cough that wouldn't go away. We had all had the cough with this flu. Her cough was noticeable and it was a pretty, intense cough, but it still seemed like a bad flu cough. She went to the doctor a few times actually in the next couple of months, and they said various things from, they gave her different kinds of antibiotics and then something else, and it was an infection. But the cough was just still not getting any better. And so once she was about 3 months in, she was very concerned. She went back to the doctor again. She insisted that they do a chest x-ray. They did, and lo and behold, they found a shadow on her lung. They sent her home with cough medicine. She emailed me to let me know she wasn't coming back to the office. And she was saying, oh, now I'm worried I have cancer, LOL. She did have to tell our supervisor that, she had this medical issue going on. She didn't say how severe it was, but she had to go to, doctor's appointments. She had to get a biopsy of her lung. So I went with her to that. At this point, she's not talking to anyone in her family, and none of them live locally. Even when I went with her, she would make me stay in the lobby and not go in and hear what the doctor said. And then she would tell me what she wanted me to know from what the doctor said. So when she went in to get the results, I'm just sitting at the oncologist in the lobby, just, beside myself. And she was in there for a long time. And she came out in tears and told me she had cancer. She had lung cancer. She didn't tell me what stage it was. At that point, I kind of was like, I'm just going to let her, for the most part, tell me what she wants to tell me. The thing about Jacqueline is that she's just very private when it comes to anything that, especially anything that would make her in any way seem weak. So even though we were super tight and she was letting me be a part of it, she was always keeping a little bit of information close to the vest. She was saying that the doctor had told her that if this was in the old days, you probably only have a year and a half to live. But now we have, these medications and things. So, and you're young and you're strong. And so, it's going to be a better outcome for you. I'm driving Jacqueline back from this visit and we're just like kind of, she needs to get another test. They need to figure out what to do next. There's a whole bunch of things that have to happen now that she has to wrap her head around. So we stopped to get coffee. Lo and behold, the oncologist was there getting coffee. And he came up and he was just, I'm so sorry. He paid for our coffee. And I was like, it's bad. Like, it's really bad. It's really bad. And so I say, let me take you home and I will tell the person we work with that you had to go home for the rest of the day. And no, I'm going to work. I'm not going home. She refused to go home. And she insisted on coming to work because if she was home, she would just be in her head and thinking about this and didn't want to do that. And she clearly wasn't going to be calling her family or anybody else. So she came to work, and this was kind of the demeanor that Jacqueline had throughout her journey with cancer. So at this point, I was sworn to secrecy. She was not telling anyone in her family. She didn't want anyone at work to know. And we had a long conversation about it, that she should tell at least her mother. She also had a couple of other close friends here in town, and she just absolutely didn't want any of them to know at all. Like, I was absolutely sworn to secrecy, and that was like kind of a tough thing for me. And I had to adjust to the fact that this is her thing and I have to adjust to how she wants to handle it. It was really difficult, but at that point I was also 100% convinced, as was she, that she was going to live for a really long time. That, again, what the doctor had said, she was, young, her whole life. She didn't smoke. She was like, she exercised daily. She went to meditation. She was like a very health conscious kind of person. So in my mind, she's got like the best chances between that and medication to have like a really long journey. I felt really bad about her family. I was like, you have to tell your mother at least. She eventually did, but I want to say it was like maybe 2 months later that she finally told her mother, and she told one aunt because the aunt was a nurse, and she made them swear to secrecy not to tell anyone else. She has a big family. She didn't want her father to know because he's in Jamaica and has health problems. She just didn't want anyone to know. I think that Jacqueline felt like it wasn't real if she didn't tell people close to her that it wasn't real, or that it was not really going to have a bad outcome. Knowing Jacqueline and feeling her vibe the way I do, I was like, she doesn't want to be asked about this constantly. She just want to be reminded about it. She doesn't want to think about it. So I would kind of pick and choose when I was going to ask, like, how are you feeling? Whatever. There starts to come a time when now more symptoms happen and things go to a different level. And then, things change as it gets worse. I want to say this was maybe like 2 or 3 months in. She started having trouble walking and she had a limp. And so whenever she would get up to go to the bathroom, I would see it. She said that it had spread to her bones. That's when she told me that she had stage 4 cancer. So I don't know if she had stage 4 from the beginning or it had jumped from 3 to 4 in that time. But it had definitely spread to her bones. And then she also had it in her brain. She started having headaches, like really bad headaches. And then it was in her brain. So then that's when she had to go do chemo just for the brain part of it. And I think that's when she jumped to a high level of fear, but also still trying to maintain. And then so she was going to lose her hair with the chemo. And she was like really worried about that because her hair had always been this sort of like big, point of fashion and pride, a big part of her like identity. And then also what would people at work think? And so we had all these conversations like, girl, we work on a drag queen show. All the wigs that they have. Like, there are all these ones that look very real with the laces. And there are a lot of places that specialize in like, black hairstyles. And so she got very excited. So she went online and she found these wigs and she did the whole thing. And nobody noticed. Nobody noticed because she always had these crazy hairdos. And yeah, she played it off. So she, she went and did all this. I went with her the first time that she had her chemo. But after that, she wanted to go alone. She's just doesn't want to talk about it. Like, I want someone here with me. I think that the between the lines is I'm scared and I want someone with me, but I don't want to talk about it. I think one of the reasons why she didn't tell some of her other friends is because she didn't want them like crying and weeping and like trying to baby her and like, or everyone sending their, cure for cancer that they saw online, or the herbal drink that they should, that they heard she should drink, or whatever it was. She didn't want all that. She said, look, once I pass, you can tell anyone you want, which is why we're having this conversation today. But she said, until then, you can't tell anyone. I did end up telling one of my friends who doesn't know Jacqueline, it's not part of work, because I just needed somebody that I could then talk to with my stress. So the one thing that I did, and I don't think that technically was against the rules, because even though she didn't want me to tell anyone, she really didn't want anyone in her world to know. And so, but even with my friend, I said, you can't tell anyone else, but I just need someone that I can cry to or vent to, because I can't have these emotions in front of her. After this chemo thing happened, she just basically kind of kept getting worse. She took medication and then it was working, but it wasn't. And then she would take a different medication and then that was no longer working. And then she would do clinical trials. And so basically there were all these different things, and it was always this ray of hope. Oh, this is the one that's going to be, better. And there are people, you hear these stories that there are people who then have a much longer experience. Jacqueline only lasted the year and a half. The minimum amount that the doctor said was the worst case scenario is how long she survived. So our next season that we had to film came when Jacqueline was doing pretty poorly. I kind of begged her not to come and film. I said we can get someone else. You can then come back in for post-production afterwards where it's easier. She just absolutely would not. That last season that we filmed together, it was just the worst. It was the worst thing. She was so bad. I don't know how everyone didn't see it. She was so bad. We started out and it was kind of okay, but she just wasn't eating at all. The amount she deteriorated just in those 7 weeks was horrific. She had a hard time walking. So most of the time I would say, you just sit at anything that requires leaving the trailer, I will do it. She would just really have a tough face. And the minute everyone was gone, she would start crying because she was in so much pain. But she wouldn't stop working. She just refused. And then whenever people were in the room with us, I had to act like everything was fine and normal. I couldn't look worried. Or I couldn't cry or be upset in front of anybody. It was really, really hard. And she still insisted to keep the secret. I asked her, what do I say if someone says something? And she was like, you just absolutely cannot say anything. So at one point, somebody who's a higher up in the company, and we usually have a lot of communication with him during filming, he pulled me aside one day and asked me. And he said that he and RuPaul, who's the host, had noticed that there was something and wanted to know what was going on. And so I just said, I said, I'm not allowed to talk about it. If you have any questions, you can ask Jacqueline, but I suggest you wait until after we're done filming to ask her. We had a big day where we had to interview queens all day long. And I knew that was a lot of talking for her. And so I finally convinced her to only work half a day and then go home and then let someone else do the second half. And by the time the lunch break came, she said, thank God you said that, because I barely made it through the morning. So the last day of filming, she had a doctor's appointment 2 days after that. And then she had another one 2 days later. So on a Wednesday and then a Friday. And I asked her to let me take her to the doctor on Wednesday. And she said, no, it was fine. It was an easy appointment. She went. I checked on her every day. I actually was looking through my texts. I was checking on her every day. I would come and bring her groceries. I would come bring her food. But she was still insistent that she was going to get another round of chemo. It was going to get better. She was really holding on to that. She had these two friends who she had kind of told who were in town. And one of these friends who I knew well said, I'm worried about her because I call her. I don't always hear back. I think we just need to do an intervention with her, is what the friend said. And I said, well, I'm supposed to go see her anyways on Thursday. So let's just both go. Let's just go show up at her house and let's do this. So I bought groceries for her. We show up at before we get there, we're she's driving, I'm driving. Jacqueline reaches out to me and says, I can't do this alone and I need your help. And that's the first time she's actually said it like that. So that was scary. So we get there and she can't get up to answer the door. It takes her about 10 minutes to get from her couch to the front door. She opens it for us and then she has to sit on a stool next to the door for about another 10 minutes before she has enough energy to walk back to her couch. We're just you need to go to the doctor now. And she refused. She had an appointment the next day and she said, oh, well, let's just do it then. So I said, okay, that's fine, but I'm not leaving you here alone. I'm going to spend the night and then I will take you in the morning. So I ended up spending the night with her and we sat on the couch watching Friends, which she loved. There was some marathon of Friends. We were watching it and she just refused to talk. She would watch and laugh and I'd say Jacqueline, we should, what, do you want to talk about what's going on? Or no, she wouldn't even let me finish the sentence. Nope. And I was like, well, we don't have to get emotional, but like, can we just talk about? No, she just she absolutely refused to talk about what if, how serious this is, what else, what happens next, because it meant that, something bad was happening. I said, you need to call your mother and tell her that we're like, what's going on, that it's getting worse, that we're going to the hospital tomorrow. And the phone call was so weird because she said, things are getting worse. She described it. She said, Misha's here. She's going to spend the night. She's taking me to the doctor tomorrow. I couldn't hear what her mom was saying, but she basically didn't say much. She said, okay, bye. I mean, it was like that. It was that fast. It was definitely denial because up until the end, not even the idea of doing anything like a will or like a sign over what happens to my things. Like there was just that was not happening. After I spent the night there, I go in and she's like getting ready. Her legs were filled with fluid. They were like, they were double the size of her normal legs. She was just hiding it. I don't know how long that was going on. Also, actually, a couple days before we stopped filming, her eyes were bright yellow, like butterballs. And I texted her because I couldn't say it in the room, like, Jacqueline, your eyes are like super yellow. She's like, I know, I'm going to tell the doctor. So anyways, I get her into chemo and it's like a whole crazy mess. But basically they're like, you need to be we can't even do chemo. You need to be like admitted. Her first day in, I thought she was going to die. It was one of those scenes out of a crazy movie where they were like putting a tube down her throat and there were a bunch of people in the room and her numbers were going all bzz, 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 bzz on the machines. And like, I'm in the corner and like, I don't know what's going on. It seemed like she might die on that day, honestly. They ended up stabilizing her. They ended up getting her in a room. There were tons of conversations that were just crazy about whether she was in ICU or this middle thing before ICU. And from the time that she went in the hospital, she died a week and a half later. So basically at this point, we were both supposed to be working in post-production. I got permission to tell our boss what was going on because she was not going to be coming in and I was like barely coming in. So basically she's not doing well, but there's this weird thing that happens where the doctors come in and they will tell her one thing, but if I ask them in the hall, they will tell me something different. So with her, they will definitely say like, look, your organs are failing and like this is happening and that's happening and it's really bad. But on the flip side, this number has improved. And Jacqueline would just cling on to that. And so Jacqueline had it in her mind, like, oh, good. As soon as I stabilize, I'm going to go into chemo. So when I'd see the doctor in the hallway and say, so she's going to go into chemo in 2 weeks, and they'd be like, she's not going to make it to that. And at one point, there was a nurse in there, Jacqueline's mother, and I'm in there. And Jacqueline says, am I dying? And I was not expecting that question. And I hesitated for a minute. And I basically said, look, it's a possibility. I said, obviously you have something really serious, but you're also, I went kind of in that lead of the doctors. Also, some of your numbers are improving. I thought she was going to die soon, but not as soon as she ended up dying. So we decided to get a medical power of attorney for me. We got a notary to come to the hospital and filled out the forms, which meant we had to discuss, what do you want me to do? At what point would you want the plug pulled if you get in that situation? And those were really crazy and difficult conversations to have. So anyway, so I, ask her all the things like, what are your, what constitutes the point at which, whatever. By the way, I did end up having to make that decision. So at one point, a doctor comes in and says, yeah, there's nothing else that we can do for here. So we're going to send her home tomorrow. And I was like, absolutely not. She absolutely cannot just go home alone on herself. And they really didn't tell me. I kind of think now that they were just sending her home to die, but that's not what they were telling me. So basically, after a lot of battling, we were able to get her in a respiratory rehab. So we're like, okay, thank God that's all settled. I did finally convince her to talk to her father. Well, she didn't actually talk to her father. She agreed for her father to know. So mom calls dad in the hospital room. Jacqueline's there. She tries to hand the phone to Jacqueline. Jacqueline refuses to talk, but he's aware of it. And it's a very short, unemotional conversation and they hang up. Her brother was told, but didn't make it in time while she was still conscious. And I'm with her and her breathing goes haywire. And all the bells go off and all the night staff comes in. She's rushed to the ICU. And now there's another doctor who was much better, who did a chest x-ray and just showed that the whole chest is it's all solid in the x-ray. Her organs are failing. Basically, this is it. And so they want to know, does she want to be intubated? Because the alternative was to just die. And she just looked so terrified, and I was terrified for her. And this is the point at which I had to really flip into like, you've got to make the right decisions for Jacqueline to the best of your ability and don't fuck it up, as RuPaul would say. So We have this conversation. She's in the room. They're basically waiting for me to leave the room to intubate if that's what they're going to do. There, all these doctors around. And I said, well, then I'll talk to you after. And then she said, wait a minute. Actually, no, you better, whatever you want to say something, you better say it now. And I was like, oh God. So I did. That was a crazy moment because I didn't want to be like, you're going to die and I'm saying goodbye to you. But I also wanted to say goodbye to her. So I just basically said, like, be strong. I love you. I don't know, like generic. Hugged her, like trying not to make it seem like it was a goodbye, trying not to cry. So we went ahead and did the intubation and they sent us out of the room and did it. So they had to also put her under in some kind of way. They'd explained it, but like they basically said she can probably hear us, but her body is fighting against the tube. So her body has to be completely knocked out. So the doctor came out and said, we needed to start talking about pulling the plug on the tube. And I'm like, oh my God, it hasn't even been 24 hours. And they were like, well, it's not going to get any better. I said, everyone encouraged me to have these conversations with her about what she wanted. And this situation's a little different than the ones we discussed. But I don't think you all have tried for even more than 24 hours. And they were saying, well, chances are she's not going to survive more than a couple days anyway. And I said, well, if that's the case, then let's let it be that way so that we don't have to feel like we pulled the plug on her. If it goes, I said, let's give it 3 days. After 3 days, we can discuss it again and see what we feel. Jacqueline's mom agreed that was good. And she died like on the 3rd day. That's the one place where I take a gray area with having kept my promise to her. And I did tell a few people at that point because I thought she's not conscious and I don't think she's coming back. I told the guy who was the head of the company who had asked about it. I told there was a few people that worked closely with us and they came to say goodbye to her, even though she was, not able to talk back to them. And so I don't know. I stand by that. By this point, it had pretty been 2 weeks that neither one of us had gone to work. I can't remember. I probably took like a day off. Much like Jacqueline, I felt like in some ways, I'm going to feel better working than being home alone thinking about this. And I kind of did, I don't know, like a Jedi mind trick with myself where I said, Jacqueline loved this season. When she was at a certain point of sickness, she was, even thinking about how can I work from home to continue. Like she really wanted to, it was the last season that Jacqueline will be credited on, that we worked together on in the filming of it. And so I want to make it be a good season for both of us. And that's the way I kind of convinced myself that just go to work. Now, the hard thing about work is a lot of my day is spent watching footage. So I'm listening to her voice. I'm hearing her cough in the interviews. Like, it's just a constant reminder. Right when it happened, and I had only told a few people, Jacqueline's brother posted something on social media. And then somebody from our group saw that. And then that's how they found out. And then they started, so I kind of stopped answering calls for a little while and text. But eventually, like word of mouth, I told some people and then they all spread like wildfire. It was just the strangest, most surreal thing to live through that aftermath because really people didn't know. They really didn't know at all. They didn't even know she was sick a little bit. And they're all coming to me because I'm the only person available to them who knows what happened. If anything, it was like a dam burst and all of a sudden everyone was like, I had no idea. Breaking news. Oh my God. Everyone's got to chime in. Everyone's got to know. And with good intentions for the most part. But I remember thinking, oh, this is what Jacqueline didn't want. This is why she didn't want people to know.
How does it feel for you to have been the secret keeper?
I think on some levels, I was the only person that could have done it because not because she wasn't close with her other friends at all, but because she had to see me every day. She did just so much she could hide from me. We were so close and I would notice things about her that, I would have noticed she was sick like a lot sooner than other people did. But I think the other thing is, and she did tell me this at some point, is that she knew that I could deal with it the way that she needed it to be dealt with. I think her controlling who had the narrative and when they had it was super important to her. And I know that she appreciated that I honored that.
Finding out about the passing of Jacqueline was such a shock to me that it didn't strike me until later when it didn't strike me until much later, and I thought to myself, wow, Mish really had to keep that secret. she had to keep it. That I honestly can't even imagine. I think it's harder to keep someone else's secret than it is to keep your own.
Certainly, especially when you're in a situation where you're like at work and people are seeing you coming in every single day, and maybe people are concerned, or maybe other people might have some curiosities or ask questions, and I think maybe other people may have had a clue. Maybe they saw her body changing a little bit and her energy level going down a bit. But just the fact that I don't know what it's like to have been in Jacqueline's shoes. And granted, we know that it was obviously tough for Mish, but I do think of like, what would it have been like to be even in Jacqueline's position, and still wanting to work through and carry this show, the workload of this show. I remember, and it makes me feel bad because season 9, which was a couple years before she passed, but season 9, she when I was filming, she we were going on felt like the 20th hour of filming, and everybody was on edge, and we were getting ready to go out into the runway, and everybody was like getting dressed in drag and putting on the finishing touches and zipping up their corsets and gluing on their nails and last minute things, and we were like trying to rush and hurry up and get this all together. And somebody said something about gosh, this is really a lot of pressure for us, and Jacqueline was like, other people on other shows don't have a problem, or something like that. And I turn around, I was like walking away from her, and then and that
Which
minute
challenge
I
is
got
this? What runway? What were you wearing? I want to picture this in my head. I hope was it the Club Kid? Were you dressed like a big peppermint?
It was either Club Kid. There was like half of us were there, so it was either Club Kid, or it might have been when I was wearing this giant hoop skirt, or the rainbow ball, the sort of pride. We did like a pride ball where it had been to do rainbows, and that was like either like final 6, 7, 5, 4, like halfway through the show.
Yeah.
And I was like, we're trying to get into our stuff, and there was like nobody helping us. And she was like, I don't know why, basically like, I don't know why y'all can't get ready, And I was walking, I never forget, I was walking, I was like going to get something and walking away. And she's like, I don't know why y'all can't get ready. And I just turned around automatically and walked directly towards her. Like I was going to like push her over. And I was like, listen, bitch, everybody else on those other shows doesn't have to get in drag and write a script and make their outfit, and we don't have anybody helping us. You know what I mean? Like, it was like I got possessed, and she was like, touche, you're right. And that's when we like really like became friends.
Me and Jacqueline used to bond because we had a tradition starting on season 8. Obviously, that's when I met her. After I'm telling you, after every single episode of Drag Race, I would call her up and we would talk about the episode. Every episode on season 8, we did it for 8, All Stars 2, 9, 10, and I believe maybe 11. I called her every. I mean, as soon as the episode ended, I would call her, and we would have these conversations about Drag Race and what we thought about the episode and what's going to happen. And she never gave me any spoilers, but it was just kind of our bonding moment that we would share every episode. So I miss her very, very much, and much love to her and to her family and to all the people who were affected by her passing.
Yeah, and extra loving shout out and thanks to Mish, who agreed to come and talk with us about this. Special thanks to our production team, Charlene Westbrook, Tracy Marquez, Amelia Rittaler, and Corey Nixon.
And a big thanks to all of our guests for sharing their secrets with us. Now listen, every episode of Town Hall, a Black Queer podcast, will have contributions from our listeners and our viewers. And if you keep an eye out on me and Peppermint's social media, maybe we'll hear from you very soon.
This episode is dedicated in loving memory to the late Jacqueline Wilson.
The Emmy Award-winning late Jacqueline.